I will go so far as to say that the reputational situation with Connecticut has nothing to do with Lori Pelletier, has nothing to do with Kevin Sullivan or with Brian Flaherty. It has to do with that legislature. And the second thing I'll say, and you can make whatever comments that you would like to on this, is the issue is in the messaging, right? I agree with you that, you know what, Pavlov proved, and there were, I won't go into it, but the big lie propaganda theory proved that if you say it over and over and over enough, all of a sudden perception becomes reality, right? So I think there's a lot of problem in the messaging of what we do. But that legislature simply doesn't understand. It just doesn't.
Well,
Jim?
also, Jim, there aren't, so I will say in their defense, right? Now, I agree with you that I'm not sure that you need a business background. I think if you're a steward at the aircraft, you probably know a whole lot about what makes a company work or not work as well. But some appreciation for the economics, some appreciation for how the private sector or how the non-political world actually operates. On the other hand, there are not a lot of rewards in the legislature for being the person who says no. There are not a lot of rewards in the legislature for the person who says, this is reality, we have to deal with it. They're pulled 10,000 ways to Sunday, and they're pulled in the direction of their constituents. Brian's organization did a great survey, they do it every year, and I just found this one fascinating. I can't remember the numbers exactly, so you'll have to help me. What's the biggest issue in the state of Connecticut? Taxes.
That was the Ernst & Young.
Taxes. No, wasn't Ernst & Young. It's your annual business climate survey.
The economy, 43%.
Yeah, and then taxes.
And then taxes at 11.
And like 11, like down here, really tiny, was spending. So even in a group that's very concerned, they're not connecting the dots. Because to some degree, everybody wants something and nobody wants to pay for it. And we've reached a point where we don't have the capacity to pay for it.
The people.
So, well, wait,
Yeah.
is what you just said to me that what we have is an unsolvable problem
Not an
with the
unsolvable
legislature?
problem. I think that Ben Barnes, who's the Secretary of Office of Policy and Management, said it. We do have a permanent structural financial crisis. And if you haven't believed that, you see the howling the minute the governor did those rescissions. Now, supposedly the legislative leaders are going to come back, and I wish them luck, hopefully not into special session unless there's some other reason to do it, but come back with some alternative ideas. The governor has said, I'll take any realistic idea that's really sincerely offered. But you can't do everything anymore. And if you do want to, then you do have to accept the inevitability of raising taxes.
Just one quick thought. Let's simulate for a minute. As a former president of the company, let's say Ben Barnes is my CFO. Ben Barnes walks into my office and he says to me, Jim, we have a permanent financial crisis on our hands. And my reaction is what?
I don't know what your reaction is.
No, my reaction is I've got to solve the problem.
Oh, sure, and I think so you have seen, I think, efforts to address that. And you're going to see some more, because I hate to say this, but on top of everything that's going on, since the legislature ended its session, the world has gotten dramatically different with the volatility and instability in the global and the American marketplace.
I understand.
So we're in an even more difficult position than we were. We were on the rise. It's not clear that rise isn't going to be dramatically slowed down.
The body language over here, Laurie tells me that he's all tight and tied up. See how it is? So
I got
unleash
things to
yourself.
say.
Well,
Look,
Unleash yourself.
there's a certain axiom in politics that sometimes when people hear things they don't agree with, and they're like, well, why are you rooting against Connecticut? Why are you, against America? The men and women connecting the dots, to use the metaphor, are the folks that are making those decisions in the boardrooms, that are trying to decide, I don't just as a Connecticut company compete with other companies in my state. I'm competing with companies in other states, and in some cases, if you think about the manufacturers, in other countries. And when Connecticut makes policy decisions and the other states don't follow, then we end up that the playing field gets tilted against Connecticut. Now, we are never going to be Mississippi. I don't believe, and we don't believe, that you should become the lowest cost state, because there are things and elements of Connecticut that higher education and all the other types of assets we have that people do agree is worth paying for. What the loss of faith is in understanding, and we're willing to pay Connecticut taxpayers are willing to pay if they knew that that shop would be put in order. That, and I'm not putting this on Ben Barnes or any one governor, but that there would be stability, that the stability would come back and you could predict and plan on those things. There have been very costly proposals put on the table that CBIA has said, yes, those are very costly to Connecticut businesses. But we don't do ourselves any good as a membership organization by having people leave the state. And as the three of us live here, have staked our future on this state and love this state, and so do the people we represent. It's more than just perception. It's not. It's about, again, having the kind of dialogue actually we're having right here.
And it's harder for you because your organization has a breadth of people they represent. You don't represent Connecticut business. You represent businesses that are in Connecticut. And so there's debates even within that organization. This year we've had the move, and I'm not going to get into it, to a unitary tax. For some reason, CBIA doesn't like the unitary tax, even though it is a huge incentive for businesses to base in the state of Connecticut. So you have a dilemma as an organization too. You have many constituents. You don't speak with one voice. You are not representative of one group any more than you are either, any more than I am. I speak for
But
taxpayers.
let me
for God's sake.
inject something in, and I'm not being critical when I say this. I really am not. But you use the word that I've got to tell you, Brian, drives me crazy. I'm sure Lori would agree. The word is conversation. You know what? If I am involved in a conversation, right, on any major issue with anybody, and hear that word anymore, that we need to have a conversation. That's like saying to me, it gets me going, right? It gets me going because when I hear we need to have another commission, whether it's permanent or whether it's permanent or temporary, I wind up saying to myself, how many times are leaders in the state of Connecticut, or it could be the United States, how many times are leaders in this state or this country going to say, what we need to do is have another conversation? We are forever having more conversations. We are forever forming more commissions. What are we going to do about it?
Can I defend you for a minute? Let me give you an example of what a conversation that would have been helpful. Much of what came out, and my friends are in the legislature, I love them, they're good to me, I support them. But much of what came out at the end of this session on the night before was never in front of them until the night before.
Fair enough. Let me tell you real quick, conversation meaning an open and honest debate. And I'll say again, the best part to talk about competitiveness in Connecticut was not for the legislature to hit the snooze bar before they left town to form a panel or a commission to have it. The people we elect in the House and the Senate should be debating these issues and shouldn't leave until they get them done right. So I'll defend my point on that. And this is part of the crux of the problem. Another task force, no, it depends what's the proof, what are they going to come out with. But we also need to stop what the state is doing by saying, let's, like a retail pricing strategy, how high can I price my product? And in this case, how high can we have Connecticut's taxes versus neighboring states and still make it okay and tell businesses, it's all right, our tax isn't that much higher or lower. We ought to be asking the question, how do we grow? How do we break out of a 0.6 growth pattern using tax policy to drive more jobs, to drive growing the pie for everybody? And this whole thing about, well, you know, our tax is this high, it's not going to be that bad. Companies may not want to go. And it's part of the unitary discussion.
We have, excuse me,
wrong way to do it.
We have about a minute to go in the first segment. All right. Having said that, Laura, you've sat here and you've listened to relatively cathartic experiences on the part of both our friends over here.